right now, but why don't we go ahead and start? Welcome everybody, and we're so grateful that you have joined us. And here we are for our Rise Strong weekly webinar, where we've been tackling a lot of the issues around mental health and the workplace and businesses and entrepreneurship as relates to COVID-19. And we're totally aware that some of us have been enormously impacted. Maybe some of us in our day-to-day not as impacted as others, but we've all felt the ripple effect of this COVID-19, either as business professionals or as entrepreneurs or people who are engaged and connected to organizations. And so, we are absolutely delighted today to have with us this very special guest. And that is what his hair normally looks like. That's his pre-COVID, right? Haircut, hey, Don? And I think I'm the same. I'm no one to talk. We're all hoping to get back to our hairdressers soon, except for Connie, because her hair looks just fine. But welcome, everybody. And maybe, Connie, why don't you take a moment or two and just introduce Don, if you don't mind, because I know that Don and you go back a little further than he and I go back.
Yeah, Don and I go back to about 2 months ago.
Yeah, it's been a whirlwind. It's been a whirlwind. Yeah,
it's been a whirlwind. But I'm so thankful because Don is doing amazing work. You can see on the screen here that he is a family mediator, a workplace mediator, and a proven negotiator. Don, I need you to come over to my house on the day. He does not want to hire Don right now to just be present all the time.
That's right.
But what an impressive resume here. Studied at Cornell, Harvard, and the UN. I mean, and we get to hear Don for free right now because he wants to help. We want to help. I just think that we're just so honored to have you here. 20 years of experience working in the family room, the boardroom, the classroom. There is his email right off the top. But Don, we just want to welcome you here to share all the kinds of nuggets you have. You have things to share. We also want to open the chat to ask any questions at any time. I mean, this is your chance. And I think at this point in COVID, there's probably the need for conflict management.
Yeah, and there is. And before we dive right into that, though, we'd love to hear from some of you on the webinar today or the Facebook Live, who you are and where you're from. It's always nice to get a bit of a reference point, I can see some of you on here that I know, and I'm sure some of you know some of each other, but we've got Larissa from Calgary, right, Connie?
Yeah.
And who else?
Amy and Andrea Louise and Bill. I wonder if Bill is still in Slave Lake, and Dale and Aaron and Hassam. Lots of LinkedIn friends here. Jacques, welcome, and
Wayne
Kim
from
and
Calgary.
Jesse. Yeah, and Laura. So good to see you all.
That's great. So I guess we were kind of talking about how important conflict resolution is. So Don, tell us about conflict resolution in COVID.
Well, it's funny. I was thinking about how to start this, and I'm going to start with something that happened recently, right? Because the temperature has recently changed, so it's a whole lot nicer out, and finally we can sort of poke our heads out of the gopher hole and be like, there's something out there, some fresh air. So at home, I was just so excited to get a barbecue going. Finally, it's barbecue weather, the sun's out, let's get it going. Now, the way our house is set up, it's set up that we don't have a sliding patio door. What we have is just a regular door that locks, and the door doesn't shut that well. So, every time we let the dogs out, we close the door and lock it. It happens every single time. Now, when you barbecue, you have that constant going outside, inside thing. So Leanne is inside and she's helping out. She's making up a salad and I'm running back and forth. And every time I go out, invariably, just because of muscle memory, they lock the door. So I'm trying to race back in and the door is locked. So, you knock the first time, you come back in, you don't say anything, you go back out. By the third time this happened, I had already got frustrated and I just banged on the door, which was, it was unnecessary. And so I come in and obviously, Leanne's reacting and, and it could have been, it's those moments that create a loss of trust. And that could really escalate. And so, something that I've learned to do over time is to take that moment of reflection. So I went back outside after that initial, why did you bang like an animal on the door? Why did you lock the door? You know what I'm doing. I go back out and I'm thinking to myself, was she really trying to lock me out because she doesn't respect me, doesn't love me, doesn't want me, inside the house? Or could it possibly be because it's the muscle memory that we always lock that door? So obviously I came back in, apologized profusely. It's like, it's okay to be frustrated. It's okay to be angry. It's just not okay to act that way. And if we do, how do we take that moment of reflection and go back and take a look at how we can alleviate that? Because, one of the things that we learn is there's a real difference between guilt and shame, for example. Guilt is a wonderful thing. It's a good emotion to have. Why? Because it's your moral compass. It means I did something. I now feel bad about that. And that's now my opportunity to catch myself and correct that behavior so I no longer feel guilty and they're no longer harmed. And that's a good thing. That's that your moral compass talking. And then we start talking about techniques and how to do that. We're just not really trained on how to be able to make those differences. And then shame is bad because shame is something bad happened to you and to me because I'm bad. Right? And that has nothing to do, and there's real, both these things are on complete other ends of the spectrum when we start really taking a look at them. So when we take a look at how we're reacting to this COVID and the frustrations, we were just talking about this earlier, Abe. I saw a meme recently that said, this isn't how I thought the apocalypse would look, right? Everybody's in their bathrobes, eating s'mores. So it's a whole lot different. But it doesn't mean that it's not having a horrible effect on how we feel, on our own mental health. We take a look at domestic violence rates are really, really high. I don't know if everybody heard what happened in Strathcona just yesterday. And then we also take a look at another troubling statistic, and this is something I heard. This is not 100% verified, so just be aware of that. But child abuse reports are down 30%. And that's very distressing. It's very distressing, not because I actually think, that would typically be a good thing if those rates were down. But I think what it really points to is the lack of reporting. Children don't have the ability to report this now like they would have. They don't have that trusted adult outside of their home that they can approach, the teacher or whoever it may be, the privacy to be able to call kids' help phone. So we're in interesting times. And, if anything from this webinar in particular, what I'm hoping would be the main takeaway is it's always okay to press on the pause button for a moment of self-reflection. That to me is the main the main takeaway.
So let's talk about that for a minute when we talk about pressing pause and conflict. When we're in the middle of a crisis like COVID, right, it does things to people's perceptions of each other and has an immediate relational impact. And yet, if I'm in a conflict, and it could be with a business associate, with a loved one, what are some ways that I can effectively, press the pause button, but not look like I'm trying to avoid something that's important that needs to be dealt with?
Well, I've never had a problem with anybody telling me, and this is a tool that I use, is, let me have a moment to think on that, or let me reflect on that, or let me let that thought percolate. I want to be able to give you the best answer I possibly can, so let me do a little bit of research on that. There's nothing wrong with that. I do a quick little game when I do these presentations in large crowds, where I think it's our human instinct to be, in order to prove that we could be right, we typically end up doing the wrong thing. So what I mean by that is if, we're willing to jump on it because we're supposed to be an expert on, this part of our relationship or on this part of the work project or whatever it is. And so we'll sometimes jump the gun without doing the research that's required to show everyone reputationally where we're at. And I think that most people, managers, colleagues, always respect that one person who goes, you know what, I want to be 100% certain. So I'm going to write that down. Let me do some research and come back to you. Because most conflicts, they're about a thing, not about a person. And when we mix that up is where things really, really escalate.
I love that, Don. I think that a lot of people, well, first of all, when we're in a crisis, we're living in the back of our brain. We become very reactive people instead of responsive people. But just reminding us of that, so important. It's okay to press pause. That is powerful right there in itself. So good. Yeah.
100%. Well, what happens is, our lizard brain takes over, right? That sort of instinctual fight or flight part of our brain just takes over, and it's like, well, I'm being attacked. Well, are you really being attacked? Is the person that you love most in the world really saying you deserve to be outside, therefore I'm going to lock the door? We can actually take that extra second, because that's all it is, right? It is a moment in time. And if we can just, twist it just a little bit, take a fresh perspective or a fresh take on it, we just see it in an entirely new light, and then we can react accordingly.
And then maybe the story we're telling ourselves in our head, we have a time to sort that out a little bit. Do you talk about that in your mediation? The idea of we're all coming from our own perspectives?
100%. And that's really important, because at the end, what is a mediator? A mediator is simply a communications translator. That's it. Between what you're saying and what they're hearing, there's a gap. And what I do is I just use the tools and techniques of a mediator to try and narrow that gap as much as possible. What I'm hearing you say is this. Is that correct? Do I have you right? Then you have an opportunity to inform me whether it's correct or not. And somebody wrote here, respond rather than react. And that is the ultimate truth. A reaction is an emotional response. A response is a thoughtful response. Right? Is a thoughtful reaction. And whenever we can take that moment and just be like, okay, what do I want to say? Or versus what I should say. And that's always a good little stimulus.
Versus what I shouldn't say.
Versus what I should say.
Have I reflected back in COVID going, shouldn't have said that. What would you say to any kind of relationship? I think they're all very similar, working, home, in COVID. What would you say to people who are having a really hard time with conflict right now?
I think it's something that you guys have been preaching since the start, since I've known you, and it's all about empathy. What happens in a relationship is, like I said at the outset, I'm a very competitive person. But we're all competitive. We're competitive in this sense. If I show you, Connie, that I'm constantly empathetic and listening and understanding, what you're going to do is you're going to start mirroring that to show me that you're more empathetic than I am, that you're more understanding and you're a better listener than I am. And that can really help grow the relationship in a really positive way, because that's the foundation we built. Anytime that Brene Brown has this really good view on it. If we're in a position that we're in conflict and people think, the hole is dug so far, we'll never get out of it. That's not true. It's and it's not. I'm not going to say never. I'm never going to use. I never use absolutist language, but what we can do is we can take a look at trust as a jar, right? And it's a big vase. And what we do is every single time we build trust, it's like taking a little pebble and putting it in, and slowly over time, over many experiences, we build that trust over. And let's say then something happens that we lose that trust. It's like taking all the pebbles and sliding them all out with one action. But now we have a choice. We can choose to just let that be and walk away from the relationship. Or we can take that vase, put it right side up, and then slowly refill it with pebbles over time. Right? We don't start off a relationship just trusting everything. I'm not going to put my social insurance number on this Facebook Live thing, right? But over time, as we build up our relationship, we're going to trust each other more and more. And that's that vase slowly being filled up. And that's in any relationship. Now, if you're looking at home relationships and at-home conflicts, we can set different criteria on how we can tackle them together. If it's at work, then we can start using systematic approaches to how we deal with it. We can start taking a look, is the conflict, is it a relationship conflict? Is it a process conflict? Is it a task conflict? And we can identify and attribute different titles to things. And once we do that, we can segment these conflicts and deal with them appropriately in the workplace. And we can still do that at home. It's just there's, who we are at home and who we are at work. A lot of people say this, I take my work hat off when I get home, or, I put on my negotiator hat, or I put on, you're still you at the end of the day, and you carry that energy with you. So if you have a bad experience at home, that's going to relate to the workplace and vice versa. So it's that conscious awareness.
That's so good, Don. I think a lot of people, when they think conflict management, tell me how I can get somebody else to do what I want them to do. Tell me how I can get my husband to listen to me. Tell me how I can get that person to see that I am right. But what you're saying is so, well, you can't cheat this, can you?
No, and it actually saves you time. Like doing it this way, if you're reflective before you say something, you take that extra time before, it actually overall saves you so much time and heartache that it's crazy. Like one of the biggest, I actually titled my basic conflict management training course, Listening to Be Heard. The only way that you're going to be heard is if you take the time to listen to someone. That is the only way, because that's what builds that trust.
And you mentioned this trust jar. I always say that trust is the currency of connection. So,
love it.
Right? And it is the currency, and you're either making deposits of trust or you're taking it away. And what you're saying, so I'm hearing you say, Don.
Well done. Where's the certificate? I'm going to sign
it. But I'm hearing you say some little tools to building trust. Listening was one, but there was a couple of others. I just would love to, for everyone to really hear those, because we often don't know how to build trust. Our intentions are to build trust. We all intend well, and then what we do is completely different sometimes. What are those little keys to build trust?
Well, it's listening and communication are primary, because we have to understand about trust. Trust is not built by these big actions, right? Trust isn't built by the fact that, I saved you from falling off a ladder. It's from remembering your mom's birthday, right? It's from knowing how you like your coffee. It's from, and making, it's those little things. That's what really builds trust, right? Have you ever had a friend walk up to you and go, hey, isn't it your dad's birthday today? And you're just looking at him like, wow, like you're amazing. Like those things are what really build up, because it shows this interest and in you and things that are important to you. Like one of the things that we do this is so typical of how we're trained in poor conflict, right? When we're walking by people in the halls, well, back then, children, we were allowed to actually walk by people. When we walk by people in the halls, what we do is we see somebody coming, we like them, and we go, hey, how are you doing? And we keep walking. Like we're asking them, how are you doing? But we're also letting them know, I don't really care about the answer. So I'm just going to keep walking. So I actually change that. When I know I'm walking in a hall, I'm obviously walking towards something. So I say, hey, really nice to see you. Because that's what I mean to say. That's what I mean to say. And then when I have the time and I ask somebody, hey, how are you doing? Tell me. I'm interested. I really care. And I really want to know. Right? So it's little things that we're never taught how to manage. Two things we're not taught in school. We're not taught how to manage relationships, and we're not taught how to manage money.
Yeah.
And now we're in a situation where both of those things are so front and center for everybody. And conflict is on the rise. Conflict is definitely on the rise because of that. So speak your truth as a tool, and listen is so important. And don't be afraid ever to be vulnerable. And I think that vulnerability is the biggest superhero quality we can have. Right?
I love that. The other day I had a bit of a conflict in my family, and I got angry for very good reasons, of course. And I finally just said to my family, I'm like, I am not angry. I look angry, but actually I am so sad. And in that moment, I really felt like I revealed myself to my family. And then I was like, oh, like, no, I just want you to see that I'm right. But I think you're onto something there, that when I got vulnerable, you're right, Dawn. My family was able to hear me past what I was feeling, past what I was showing at that moment.
And that's so great. Like when, I ask people, when I do these presentations, I do them for teachers, right? In schools. And at one time I remember I did a presentation about, being vulnerable in front of your students. And one of the teachers said, oh, we'll just be eaten alive, right? If we do that. And I responded with, I love that you said that, because will they? And they went, what? I go, will they actually eat you alive? He goes, well, no, that's not what I meant. I go, but that's, so let's continue on that thought. What is the difference between fear and danger? So the fear of being vulnerable is that if I'm vulnerable, they'll see it as a sign of weakness. They'll expose it and make fun of it, or, dismiss me because of it, or, all this huge list of like, oh, what's going to happen? What is the actual danger of these things occurring? If I'm vulnerable with the person that is closest to me in my life, and I go to Leanne and I confess something, or I talk about something, or I discuss a weakness, the reality is she's going to build me up. The reality is she's going to help me discuss it and maneuver through it. And through that, now we've also taken another step in building trust, right? If you go to your manager at work and say, hey, I would like additional training on this because I would like to know. That's that level of vulnerability creates a better connection, and now you can be skilled in something else and receive further training and actually advance your career.
That's really good.
Right.
We got a couple of questions here in the chat box, Dawn. One is, what would you recommend to those who are addicted to conflict? And this has a two-part, so what would you recommend to those who are addicted to conflict, and what would you recommend to those around them?
So addicted to conflict, I've heard that term before, and I'm not going to say that nobody's addicted to conflict. That's not what I'm going to suggest. What I'm going to suggest is that conflict is a strategy. It's a strategy to receive an outcome. So I want to have X, whatever X may be, and through our relationship, this strategy of escalating conflict between us has resulted in me achieving X. So therefore, I'm going to continue this path. So with somebody and those around them, with somebody who's addicted to conflict, there's the opportunity of mirroring behavior, of using empathy and using listening and using a different strategy in how you react versus respond to somebody, that you're now shifting the strategy. Now, this is not something that's going to happen from one day to the next, right? If I could teach you guys how to do a correct I statement, you do it tomorrow, and then, it doesn't work. So we trash it. We just miss the idea. How to overcome, to change the way we communicate requires a considerable amount of effort. So the whole fear versus danger thing, I want to bring you back to that because this really relates. It's actually a TED Talk by Chris Hadfield. And he talks about, people who are afraid of spiders. Are you really afraid of spiders? Or, what's the difference between the fear and danger of spiders? So the only way to really overcome your fear of spiders is to walk through, like find a spider web, make sure there's no dangerous spider around it, and just walk through it. And like face first, just put your face right in it and walk through it. And the first time you do it, you're going to have those heebie-jeebies go, oh, it's in my ear, right? You're going to lose it. But, by the 100th time you do it, you have now fundamentally changed how you interact with nature, how your primal fear is now completely gone. And that's the same thing with people who have learned a communication style of conflict. There is a way out, but there's no solution that's, we saw that great documentary, Now Our Lives Are Great. No, these are concerted efforts that you're going to have to now do 100 times, and each time gets easier, but it's very difficult. And time consuming.
Someone else is asking in the chat, what if you've done all these things? What if you've done all the great communication skills that we're talking about and nothing works?
So, it's very difficult for me to say cut bait because I just fundamentally don't believe that. First of all, let me be clear. If your safety is in threat in any way, get somewhere safe. There's no question. That is the most important step that you can take. Once we're past that point and we're in a safe place, I think that it's just time. Time can heal that. My father and I, we have this great relationship right now, and we didn't always have that. My dad he always pushed me to do, to work harder and to be better and to be stronger, because he saw the potential in me. Now, I know that now. As a kid, it's like, why is he being so mean to me, right? It's that feeling. And so I've adapted the way I talk to him in terms of there's a lot more I statements, and the reactions are amazing. And now our dialogue and our communication is where is healthy. It's not ideal, but it's healthy. And if we can create those boundaries and mirror that behavior of, I need to take that time. I need to walk away from this. What you're showing is that you're willing to discuss up to a certain level of conflict, but then you need to walk away. But then you build that trust by coming back, right? And it's all about taking that time and practicing, and even role playing with your friends. Like, what should I say or how should I do it? And practicing those situations and imagining yourself coming to conclusion. It's all about mindset. If you believe you're going to succeed and you believe this is going to work out and you believe you're going to be patient, well, guess what? You're going to be patient and you're going to work on it until you kind of reach that common goal.
I noticed that you said I need statements. So you said I statements, but when you mentioned your I statements, they said you were saying I need. Is that what an I statement looks like? Is starting with that, or? So
an I statement is, I'm a graduate as well. I have a finance degree in accounting, right? Like that's as far away from this as possible. But I do take a look at some of these things as equations, right? So, for example, if I paraphrase what you said, and then I attribute a word of feeling to that, well, that's empathy. So paraphrasing plus feeling word equals empathy. So with an I statement, it's the same thing. How do you gain understanding? Well, I am never allowed to use the word you. You is judgmental, right? Or it can be. Now, if we now create a rule that in a conflict, we eliminate the use of the word you, first of all, we're more thoughtful because we have to be careful about what we say. I'm not allowed to say that word. So I have to think about what I say before I say it. And the way it's constructed is when this happens, I feel or I need, or this is what happens to me. So therefore, this is what I need.
That means that we need to know what we need and know how we feel a bit.
But it's in that reflection. So if we eliminate that, you always yell at me is one thing versus, okay, now I have to be thoughtful. I'm not allowed to say the word you, and so there's no accusation. So when the volume begins to go up, when we start yelling or when we escalate this conflict, I feel unheard. I feel that my opinion doesn't matter. So I need for us to ensure that the tone is respectful. So now what I'm doing is I'm pushing empathy on you for me. And so you're understanding what I'm saying because I'm not making it about you. This is not Connie is this yeller. This is how I feel when we begin yelling. And I really want to work on something with you. I really want to come to a conclusion with you on something great. So maybe we can try a different strategy. That's communication.
That's really good. That's really good. And when times are tough and people are feeling anxious, I would imagine that you could find research that says that they have a lot more you statements than I statements, right? Because and so what strategies could you offer to people who, maybe they're communicating poorly, not because they're poor communicators, but because they're under stress, and how can they manage that stress better? Because we don't want to create more stress with our poor communication. That's been my experience. I'm already stressed out, and then I go and yell at somebody, and then everything's worse, right? And I'm wondering, how did I find myself in this place, right? So what are your thoughts on that?
I think one quick thing that doesn't take a lot of communication training to do is initially express your intent. Right? So if you initially express your intent, what you're doing is you're ensuring that they understand, I'm not mad at you, right? I'm elevated. I feel stressed. Like I need to get this resolved because if I don't, then this cascade of issues can be, will arise. So if you express your intent of the situation before, say, I might not be communicating this correctly. And if you start discussing things in that manner, it changes the dynamic. Now they're listening to your intent, because that really is the difference between where conflict arises. It's the separation between intent and perception. And that's where we get offended, right? I can't believe you perceived my intent that way. Don't you know who I am? I'm this wonderful, loving, empathetic person. So it must be you. And this other person's like, I can't believe this, he would do this or she would do this. So expressing intent and perception is also a really powerful way to begin your journey in proper communication. Right?
These are so good. I kind of wish I would have known this about 20 years ago when I first got married. That's
right. Yeah. It's that line from The Wedding Singer. This would have been great to know yesterday, right? But I think that's the point. And so now that really goes towards the apology. And the apology is this really cool thing. And people are like, if I apologize for something, it means I'm accepting the blame for it. And that's not a proper apology. A proper apology is, I recognize that something I did affected you in a negative way. My intent was not to do that, but I recognize that was the outcome. So I'm sorry, because that wasn't my intent. Now, how can we work together to make sure that doesn't happen again? You can take any event and now make it a trust building exercise. And that can be done at work. That can be done at home. It's if we start practicing, regardless of what hat we're wearing at what different time, then it becomes consistent. Because the more we start talking about all these different terminology, like use of terminology, intent, perception, guilt, shame, and we use the same language at home and at work, then it starts becoming part of our routine and how we communicate with each other, which is a huge step.
Right. A lot of people are trying to keep work professional, but this is professional. This is a professional way of living life. This is just a nice human way of living life. So I agree with you 100%. Both work and home, no different.
Well, it really isn't. I mean, at home you're just, manager of a bunch of, unskilled labor, but
And I'm unpaid.
Unpaid. That's right. Unpaid.
Maybe you're the unskilled labor that's being managed. Okay.
That's right.
That's me.
That is very, very true. And it just comes down to, are you, when you're feeling frustrated, it's that self-recognition. You are allowed to be frustrated. You are allowed to be angry. Like, these are just normal emotions that every single one of us feel. But that's where it stops, because you're not allowed to act that way. I'm not allowed to act angry, right? If I get cut off on the highway with all my skills, I get cut off on the highway, I'm already imagining I should follow them to their house and do something. I go crazy in that 1 second, right? And then I don't start doing the chase of trying to cut them off and back and forth. It's that, okay, it happened. Maybe they didn't even see me. Maybe they're in the hospital. Somebody's in the hospital. Like, it doesn't matter. If I choose to now partake in this, what is the benefit to me?
Yeah.
Right. So it's a little it's tough, but over time it takes time. And that's the thing, you gotta give yourself that flexibility to understand that self-awareness and self-recognition. I saw somebody just kind of post that, but that self-awareness that you need, we have it in here, but how do we get it from the back of our mind to actually our spoken word and our actions? And that's that level of training. That's that. All this is years and years of training between here and here, right?
And I don't know if we ever fully arrive, it's a learning process, right? And I love how you're saying, even with all your knowledge, a lot of people think, if I just knew more tools and skills, knowing it is only half of it, right?
Well, yeah, because there's an element of humanness to all of us, right? We are irrational beings. We do really stupid things at different times where we suddenly sit back and go, why did I just think that was smart, right? So we do these things all the time. So of course they're going to happen in our relationships. Of course they're going to happen at work. And so it's that level of accountability that you're willing to take that now determines whether the relationship builds trust or loses trust. Right? What am I going to do to now fix it? Okay? And how are we going to discuss that, and how are we going to move forward from there? And so, I just want to show you guys, there's a couple of, let me just see if I have it here. So this is a course that we created on conflict resolution techniques. And we're going to make this available to everybody on this webinar. Just email Dawn at freshstartmediation.ca. And what this basically is asking you to do is to go through 3 elements, right? Find out which disagreement you're talking about. And then we go through a reflection piece, an insight piece, and then a practice piece. And as we go through and we start taking a look at this self-work that we're going through, only then can we start taking a look at how we are now going to respond to our partner. Because one of the main elements, and I can't say this enough, is that only one half of the of the conflict needs to know how to manage conflict really, really well. Because we do have that tendency to mirror one another. So if I start behaving in a certain way, it's not immediately, but you are going to start to reciprocate. That's just part of human nature. If I'm quiet and I'm listening and I'm aware, then you'll feed off that. And that's where, as a mediator, it really, really works well, where we can kind of come to resolve a conflict, resolve a dispute, manage the conflict really well. It's because I don't have that emotional stake in the outcome. You do, and you do. And if I'm always trying to show you guys how to behave, that I'm always curious, I'm always trying, taking that extra effort to understand and listen and ensure I got it right. And then I ask reflection pieces. How do you feel about that? You start seeing the shift in those people being mediated, that they start doing that to one another, right? I always keep my tone inquisitive and professional. And they might escalate, and I don't tell them that they're doing something wrong, because you're not. You're feeling what you're feeling, and you're expressing that. But I say, hey, we're trying to keep this. We're trying to understand that, and slowly you see that volume reduce, and everybody going back to that same level. Because a relationship where we go from conflict to love, and it goes like this, that's unhealthy, right? We're supposed to be a little bit more on this track, right? It's not a perfect line, because, like I said, we have a certain humanness attached to it. But, having that little wave adds a little bit of spice.
Absolutely. And where would we be without spice, right?
That's right.
We'd be sitting around just eating potatoes all day. So, Don, I had a friend who was a mediator, conflict resolution specialist, and I remember asking him, one time, how did he get into that? Like, what was the thing? And in his story was just, he'd been raised in a really conflict-oriented environment, and those conflicts had really damaged him. So what was behind your, you getting into this as a field? I mean, to go from an accounting degree and with a finance specialization to conflict resolution mediation. I mean, tell us a little bit about that. So
thank you. That's a great question, and I think that they're actually very related, and a lot of people don't look at it from that view. I don't really do yoga. I'm not into transformative, meditation or anything like that. I guess the way I see the world is about partnerships and teamwork. So from my finance degree, I ended up working on Bay Street in Toronto for a lot of years. And there's a lot of negotiation that takes place there. And one of the initial books I read on this was by Fisher and Urey, called Getting to Yes. Right? How you're always kind of, and when I first saw the book, I thought that this was a book about beating the other person, right? But what it really is, it's about that shift from being positional to being interest-based. And the way for me to meet my outcome in negotiation is to ensure that I can meet yours. And so when we have that level of understanding, that really helped me in my workplace. And then, of course, I got divorced. And so when I got divorced, I moved here, and then I heard about this world of divorce mediation. And my first thought was, man, where was this a year ago? This would have been fantastic. And I started, throwing feelers out in the mediation community in Calgary. And it's such a great community. It's such a great community. The executive director of Adria, Paul Conway, was, how can I help you be more involved in this industry and in this business? And so I do some work with Adria now as well. I'm on the board of the Alberta Family Mediation Society. I'm the executive director of the Alberta Arbitration and Mediation Society. So it's all about understanding that what we're trying to do is get into that interest-based dialogue on a much broader scale, and then the effects that has for mental health benefits. So we work, for example, with the Thumbs Up Foundation out in Airdrie. And I encourage everybody listening to check out the Thumbs Up Foundation website. Their goals, they're working on a harmonized health system in Airdrie, where mental health is at the top of the concern. And we work with them. So a lot of these courses that we offer, we do through them. If you're eligible under their criteria for a mediation, we will do that pro bono to help you out. So we certainly believe in helping people out, and that's how that direct correlation works. If I'm trying to meet my needs of whatever it may be, then that Bible book, that Getting to Yes, which is the Bible of all interest-based study, that's where I recommend you go. And then it's just going to be, you're going to end up being a mediator if you read that book. That's that's
I'm
how
a 13-year-old. I need to be a mediator. I need to be a lawyer, actually. Don, somebody's asking in our chat here, through COVID, the world has effectively been knocked into neutral. How would you encourage us to be more at peace at getting neutral within ourselves and with those close to us who are now feeling uncharacteristically ineffectual, emotionally dysregulated, and frustrated with themselves and then others closest to them?
I guess the question I have is how, we're willing to put that question out here in a webinar, but I promise you, the person who wrote that question, I feel that same way. And I'm willing to say that to anybody because it's the truth. We all know that everybody in one way or another, right? We can set the dial anywhere between 1 and 10. We're all feeling similar in a certain way. So at the outset of this, I'm sure everybody has this now old high school Facebook friend that has become a COVID expert that knows that 5G has started this and Bill Gates is involved and so forth in some level or another. But the point is my instinct is to correct them. But now it's, why do we think that? Where's that coming from? It's I get really curious about it. Because first of all, Facebook is never a good place to resolve any dispute. That's not a wonderful forum. I'm just going to throw that out there. I would avoid that at all costs. But there's nothing wrong with providing information or there's Carl Sagan. There's this article. It's fantastic. The Baloney Test by Carl Sagan. If you just Google that, and it gives you all the tools that you need to be able to discern between what's fact and fiction and a lot of this. But that's an academic perspective. The emotional perspective of it is we're feeling dysregulated.
Yeah.
We're feeling, something's up. It's got to be somebody's fault. There's a certain amount of blame, and we need to band together. I guarantee you, the people who are the most at the outer edges of conspiracy theory are looking for connection. They're not looking to distance themselves from everybody. They're looking to bring everybody on board. And so, if we give that moment of listening. Why do you feel that? And not engage in debate, but engage in listening.
Yes. No, I can't agree more. I mean, I've often used the example of, I'm sure there's some Canadians on the call, and I'm a Canadian, and we're kind of smug, right? We're kind of like, well, we're not as bad as the US, and then we make fun of and I don't agree, but like the folks build the wall. And yet really, people only put up walls when they feel afraid. Right? I mean, a wall is a subconscious response, or it's a conscious response in a physical threat. But when we're talking an emotional or a social threat, what do? We put up a wall, right? Rather than a bridge. And so, the funny thing is as we castigate these people and put them down, oh, look at them. I often say to people, do you think that that's going to help them, put up more bridges, and in other words, with all of these folks out there today with conspiracy theories and lots of different ways of seeing the world, what are we really doing when we do this big intellectual debate? We're missing what they're feeling. And if you can understand and connect to what they're feeling oftentimes, then the intellectual debate, if it's that, actually the dynamic changes. But, social media doesn't give you the opportunity to do that. It's a hammer. Rather than a tool for genuine connection. And so I'm with you 100%. I think, I can, I'm an educated person, 2 master's degrees. I can slam somebody intellectually as much as anyone else, but is that really going to solve the problem? Is that going to bring us closer together? Or am I potentially driving them further with the interest of showing everybody how intellectually superior I might or might not be, right?
Well, and I love that you said that, Abe, because all this really comes down to is how communication, how we readily accept information. So with the media, everything is just now down to these sound bites. There's no context. There's no extra content. There's no emotion behind it. There's just a quote, and now we attribute somebody's worth based off 6 or 7 words, right? For to go back to that, who is the basket of deplorables? The people who actually do something you disagree with, or the people who actually call them deplorable, right? One thing that I find absolutely astonishing is how we gauge somebody else's intelligence by how much they agree with our own opinion. So it's
right. That's it right there, Don.
That's it.
Yeah.
We have echo chambers. Our
Totally.
echo chamber, the people who are in our circle, we listen to the same podcasts, we have the same political views, we read the same books, and then when somebody comes in with a completely different point of view, it just throws us off. And obviously we're right and they're wrong, and it just creates division right there. I love
Yeah,
that.
and so they are now part of a different tribe, and so therefore now I can, on the extreme, dehumanize them, right? Or at our absolute best, it's like, hey, so your opinion is different from mine. I'd love to learn more. And when do we have the strength to do that? I would love for us to get to that point where it's, and I'm guilty of this. A lot of my friends, my closest friends, I listen so much that sometimes when I get, in a poker game with the guys or sit down at a pub, I'm like, I feel like debating, right? I'm going to disagree with everybody on everything just to kind of, spice things up. And, do I have a tendency to go too far? Absolutely, right? Because my mindset is this is a game. And sometimes you can lose sight that they might actually have an emotional attachment to something. Yeah. So yeah, even I will take that step back and be like, hey, I am sorry. Like I wasn't even thinking of it from that perspective. So let's start working on a different way, right? And there can be understanding. There can be that accountability, right? So I'm now accountable for my actions. I did something wrong. Let's try and move forward together, right? Don't ignore it. That's not what I'm asking for. I'm asking for us to now find a better way.
That's so good. So good. Well, thank you so much, Don. And we really, really appreciate you taking your time together with us today. Again, folks, please do send a note to Don at Fresh Start Mediation.
.ca. Yeah.
.ca. Sorry,
Yep.
freshstartmediation.ca. We put it in the comments. We also put it in the Facebook Live. And when Connie sends out the email with a link to this recording, we'll let them know. And when they send you the email, what's going to happen? You're going to give them something back. What is that?
So that's that course that I showed you guys. It's, it works in personal relationships and partnerships, but it also definitely does extend to the workplace, right? So it's, we also have, if you go to our resources page at freshstartmediation.ca, there's a leading difficult conversations PDF that we have, infographics and a lot of information that you guys could have to help you begin your journey. Now, Adria offers a ton of courses. There's a lot of webinars. Coursera has a lot of information as well. So yeah, I really recommend just beginning your journey.
That's so good. So Don, just on a final note, what's the first thing you're going to do when the lockdown ends? Are you going to get a haircut, or are you going to eat it at a restaurant?
It's already booked, baby. The haircut. He came out and he put on Facebook that he's open on May 14th. I noticed it within 5 minutes. I called him and I got the last booking of the day at 5 o'clock. Yoni, I'm coming to see you, brother. I can't wait.
So he's already booked up, the first day.
Oh yeah. Oh, I bet now it's beyond. I'm so excited.
Well, thank
you. Do you know how much gel this took? It's unbelievable.
And so thanks so much, and honestly, again, thanks so much, Don. We, get on our email list, Wellness Innovate. Just go to wellnessinnovate.com and you can, subscribe, and we'll get you the recording to this because there's so much great information here. you know, as we close together, you know, Connie and I and Wellness Innovate, our hope and desire has been to just, you know, create conversations where we can talk about mental health and workplace and rising strong and supporting one another. And so much good content here. And so please do reach out to Dawn. And also, you know, if you'd like some of the support that Connie and I can offer as well, you can reach out to Connie, and there's her email address on the screen. And Connie, any final words? We'll just turn it over to you.
I just want to say thank you so much, Dawn. Well, we knew the moment we met you that you're a kindred heart, and you're a wonderful person to have in the corner for people right now. And we're just so honored you'd spend the time, and everything that you sent or said today. We're gonna summarize it in a little bit of a blog post so that we can really digest this, so that we can turn it from intention and knowledge to action. So you're just doing a stellar job out there, Dawn. We're cheering for you.
Thank you very much, and I can't thank you guys enough. Like I said, from moment one, what you guys are doing at Wellness Innovate is great. Keep it up. If there's anything I can do to support you, any of your listeners, I look forward to hearing back from you. But thank you very much for having me. Peace.
Love it. Thanks so much, Dawn, and thanks everybody for joining us. Please join us next week, same time, same place. We have some amazing guests lined up, and so we'll see you then. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.